There's a certain sound the internet makes when it decides someone is worth worshipping. You've heard it. The quote tweets, the fan cams, the emojis stacked into little neon shrines. It looks loud, but it feels organized, like thousands of people inhaling at the same time. Celebrities don't trend by accident. They are lifted. And if you scroll long enough, you start to notice something strange. The people doing the lifting aren't being paid. They just care that much. Or at least, that's how it looks. But this didn't start online. Before hashtags, before streaming numbers, before the idea of being known was a metric, obsession had to move by hand. Posters, letters, vinyl sleeves passed around until the corners softened. Even then, people were already losing their minds over strangers they would never meet. Before stans, there were superfans, and before Twitter, threads, and fan cams, there were screaming teenagers fainting in stadiums. It all started with beatlemania in the 1960s, an obsession so wild even historians still struggle to describe it. When the Beatles landed in America in 1964, it was chaos. Tens of thousands of fans packed JFK Airport, screaming like their lives depended on it. The mere sight of John, Paul, George, or Ringo had short-circuited their brains. Teenagers from your grandparents' generation were crying, collapsing, screaming like their bodies were trying to let out a sound bigger than their lungs were built for. At some concerts, the screaming was so loud that the band couldn't even hear themselves play. Journalists at the time tried to explain it with words like hysteria. Psychologists called it hysterical contagion. Basically, emotional chain reactions that spread like wildfire. But what was actually happening? For a lot of young women that belonged to a world that expected them to behave, this was the only place they were allowed to feel something without making themselves smaller first. They weren't just screaming because they thought the Beatles were cute. This was rebellion disguised as love. Elvis had already set the blueprint for mass hysteria. The man could barely finish a song before the crowd drowned him out. Women ripped clumps of his hair out, stole bits of his clothing, and, you guessed it, fainted mid-show. Some even tried sneaking into his hotel rooms. Elvis was both worshipped and condemned. The media called him dangerous. Parents called him obscene, while his fans called him theirs. By the 1970s, the devotion developed structure. David Bowie had a following that treated him like a god from another planet. People wrote letters to each other about what his songs really meant, swapped concert bootlegs by mail, and used fan magazines to decode every outfit, every lyric. These were some of the earliest fan networks, built entirely through postal addresses and photocopied newsletters. Imagine the patience it took. No instant updates, no live streams, and no hashtags. You had to wait weeks for a reply from another fan across the country. But that waiting made the connection feel intimate, like being a part of a secret club, earned and personal. But none of it was personal, of course. Fans were at the mercy of whatever the PR teams decided to release. Glossy photos and typed quote-unquote exclusive updates that showed up in mailboxes weren't personal. But it didn't matter. That weird emotional closeness to someone you didn't know became the backbone of fandom culture. It doesn't matter that your idol doesn't know you exist. What matters is that they made you feel seen. By the 1980s and 1990s, Michael Jackson couldn't go anywhere without causing a security nightmare. Fans slept on sidewalks outside hotels just to catch a glimpse of him waving from a balcony. Some even fainted at the mere mention of his name. Madonna had fan clubs in nearly every major city, and her fans collected anything remotely tied to her, including posters, buttons, t-shirts, even disposable cups from tour venues. If she touched it, it became a relic. By 1986, psychologists finally named it celebrity worship syndrome, an actual psychological phenomenon where admiration becomes identity. A hit album or a breakup could genuinely affect their mood. Fame, for the first time, was being treated like a drug. Still, analog obsession had its limits. You could worship from afar, but distance kept some emotional boundary. If a critic trashed your favorite artist, you might rant about it to your friends, but that was it. There was no reply button. You couldn't swarm someone's comment section or send threats to journalists. Your love, no matter how intense, stayed confined to your bedroom walls, covered in posters and cassette tapes. That boundary, distance, was the last safety rail, and the internet was about to remove it. Suddenly, you just needed a screen name to feel like you were devoted to someone in the early 2000s. If you were a fan of anything, you could find your people on fan forums, chat rooms, and early message boards. It didn't matter where you lived or what school you went to, you could log on and instantly be surrounded by others who cared just as much about the same niche thing. Early internet fans found identity in usernames, profile pictures, and MySpace bios. Your handle could literally be MyCamRules or SkaterGirl_12, and nobody thought it was strange. You weren't just liking an artist anymore, you were announcing it. People decorated their live journal and Neopets page like shrines. Glittery backgrounds, song lyrics in cursive fonts, pixelated photos and GIFs saved and resaved until they were just a blur of colors, all themed around your favorite star. This wasn't just a fandom anymore, it was self-branding. Being a fan was your digital skin. And then, almost by accident, the culture got a new word for this devotion. In 2000, Eminem released Stan, a story about a fan so consumed by admiration that it became self-destruction. It was supposed to be a cautionary tale. Stan wasn't supposed to be a compliment, but the internet has always loved turning warnings into aesthetics. By the mid to late 2000s, calling yourself a stan wasn't shameful. It was a flex. It meant you cared the most. You knew the lore best. You were the trivia star. And then came the first true test of stan culture at scale. Justin Bieber. The Beliebers weren't just fans. They were something almost militarized. They moved like a swarm. They could get a hashtag trending on Twitter in minutes. They could tank a music review because the critic rolled their eyes one too many times. Random people on the internet got doxxed for making jokes about him. They were 13-year-olds sending threats from their family PCs, and they meant every word. It was the first time fandom had the power to hurt someone's life, the first time the world saw what a networked fanbase could do. Then One Direction entered the chat and the chaos multiplied. The Directioners were an army of mostly teenage fans who practically lived online, and Tumblr was their headquarters, the emotional core of early 2000s fandom life, and a place where Directioners wrote essays about a single photo of Harry Styles' hands. They created conspiracy theories about the boys' relationships, spent hours decoding interviews for secret signs, and wrote fanfiction that blurred into canon. They were analyzing micro-expressions, a look, a pause, a sentence taken out of context. Every gesture became data, every lyric became a message, and every rumor became a storyline. It was intense, but it was also comforting. For kids who felt invisible in real life, this was where they could exist loudly. You could pour your heart out about how Harry Styles just gets you. And hundreds of people would reply, same. But the comfort came with a catch, because the internet made something else possible. Retaliation. Because now, if someone criticized your idol, it wasn't just a differing opinion. Oh, no. Nuance was forgotten, and instead, it felt like a personal attack. So, you would respond. Publicly, instantly, and with backup. And if you didn't defend them or didn't join the war every time drama erupted, you were labeled a fake fan. It became emotional currency, loyalty measured in likes and reblogs. This was the beginning of the dogpile. It got to the point where in September 2013, Aston Villa player Gabriel Agbonlahor received thousands of threats on Twitter from fans after he injured Lewis Tomlinson during a charity football match. Fans threatened to kill him and chop his balls off. The distance that existed in the analog era, that tiny bit of space that kept obsession contained, was gone. And once the distance disappeared, something else came into focus. If you can gather thousands of emotionally charged people in one place with one click, what happens when the platform starts nudging them? Because right around 2015, social media shifted in the way it sorts and shows content, subtly but massively. And everything shifted. Social media became less about connection and more about engagement. Engagement doesn't care if you're happy, angry, or crying at 3 a.m. over a celebrity tweet. It just wants you to feel something enough to stay online. The longer you stay, the more ads you see, and nothing drives engagement like conflict. At first, this didn't look like anything dramatic. Posts that got more comments showed up a little more. Tweets that sparked arguments stayed on the timeline longer. Videos with heated discussions under them appeared for more people. It felt natural, like the internet was just showing you what was quote-unquote trending and popular. Did anyone really notice back then that conflict was rising to the top, not because it was meaningful, but because it was sticky? Platforms were feeding emotions back to us over and over. Anything that caused a response, good or bad, became fuel. And then something new happened. K-pop fan bases. They were the first to treat the internet like a battlefield and a spreadsheet at the same time. The BTS Army, Blackpink's Blinks, EXO-Ls, they mobilized for their idols. They flooded news feeds with fan cams, dominated hashtags, and coordinated streaming parties to manipulate the charts. In June 2020, amid the global protests following up the murder of George Floyd, racist hashtags like White Lives Matter, Whiteout Wednesday, and Blue Lives Matter started trending. K-pop stans quickly organized on Twitter and Instagram to flood these specific hashtags with unrelated fan cams, memes, and messages of anti-racism. This effectively buried the original racist and pro-police content, rendering the hashtags unusable for their intended purpose, effectively derailing the hate campaigns. It was powerful and kind of beautiful, but it also proved the fandoms had evolved into actual movements. But the same energy that could be used for good could also turn toxic overnight. Rival fandoms clashed in digital wars, whole comment sections became battlefields, and trend manipulation became an art form. Social media companies just watched it happen because the numbers looked good. And Western pop fandoms were taking notes. Swifties were tracking vinyl variants and first-week numbers like stock analysts. Barbz were monitoring charts like territory maps. Arianators were trading screenshots of Spotify counts like they were evidence in a trial. They turned their corners of the internet into strategic operations, replaying music videos for hours and setting up fake accounts or VPNs to trick platforms into counting extra plays. Every argument, every ratio, every viral subtweet kept the engagement wheel spinning. The celebrities and their PR teams weren't blind to it either. They started feeding the machine with cryptic tweets, Easter eggs, sudden limited edition merch drops via carefully timed Instagram stories. Every move designed to keep fans decoding, reacting, speculating, basically doing the marketing for them. When the pandemic came in 2020, the internet became everything. People were locked in, lonely, anxious, and desperate for something to hold on to. And for a lot of people, that something was their favorite artist, Twitch streamer, YouTuber, or band. Isolation basically poured gasoline on stan culture. Everything turned political, moral, and personal, without a hint of nuance. Cancel campaigns became a sport. The line between accountability and entertainment blurred completely. People spent hours digging up old tweets, screenshots, and out-of-context clips just to take someone down. It wasn't only outsiders getting canceled, they started turning on their own idols the second they stopped fitting their fantasy. The same people who once praised stars for being relatable now demanded them to be flawless, politically correct, emotionally available, but also somehow mysterious and untouchable. Take Doja Cat in 2023. She had one of the most loyal online fan bases, but the moment she pushed back, the moment she refused to play the role of the approachable, grateful celebrity because she called out her fans for being obsessive and for treating her like a product, the internet imploded. Overnight, fan accounts disappeared, stan pages turned hostile, and hashtags flipped from love to hate. Was it even truly loyalty then? Ariana Grande faced a different version of the same pattern. Her personal life became a public trial, and her fandom split like political parties. Whether she should have left Mac Miller in his state, her early engagement to Pete Davidson and subsequent breakup, her home-wrecking scandal with Ethan Slater, some defended her like one would a flawed family member, while others moralized her choices as if they were judges on some invisible court of internet ethics, as if fans were shareholders in her existence. These PR militias even learned to mass report their rivals. Entire album launches have been sabotaged with fake leaks or rumor campaigns. The language around music started to sound like the language of territory. In one instance, the Blackpink fan union, BBU, had its Twitter account suspended due to mass reporting from rival fandoms. Even brands and artists now exploit this. If fandom psychology was a business model, billionaire Taylor Swift has mastered it. What with the cryptic Easter eggs, the mildly different vinyl variants, and the limited editions that drop conveniently to block other female artists from reaching the top of the charts, every release turned into a cultural scavenger hunt that made fans feel like they were her best friend. That sense of inclusion, of belonging, it's powerful and clearly profitable. And the emotional toll is real. Fans are spending thousands on merch they'll never use, staying up all night to protect their favorite celebrity, fighting strangers to prove a point. Is this passion or pressure? At its core, these are parasocial relationships, and you're seeing it everywhere. Streamers call their audience family. Influencers post emotional confessions about burnout or heartbreak, not just because they're being honest and relatable, but because vulnerability performs well. And when your favorite YouTuber looks into the camera and says, "I love you guys," it triggers the same part of your brain that responds to a real connection. And it's so much easier to find it online than make an effort to form bonds with the people you know offline. Entire online ecosystems built on emotional attachment. Some streamers have viewers who spend hours every day watching them eat, talk, sleep, and exist. Influencers casually mention how they miss their followers, and people genuinely believe it. Are you being missed as a fellow human or as a number, a metric on a spreadsheet? Even news outlets depend on fandoms for clicks. There's no going back to analog fan clubs and handwritten letters. And instead of celebrating art, people now police it. It's not about who made the best song or movie, but who's problematic, who's cancelled, and who's safe to support. Nuance is dead. Everything is either iconic or evil. And the sense of belonging that once felt warm and comforting has become suffocating. But the celebrities aren't suffocated, they've adapted. They know how the game works and they play it very well. Every interaction is calculated, every oops moment planned. It's a never-ending performance where we are both the audience and the unpaid promotion team. It's kind of wild when you step back and look at it. As long as people are lonely, hopeful, overwhelmed, or looking for meaning, stan culture will continue shifting and reappearing with new faces, new platforms, but the same emotional core. The dark history of stan culture isn't really about fame, or fandom, or even the internet. It's about us, our hunger for connection, our need to worship, our fear of being left out. And as long as those things exist, the cycle will keep spinning, just faster, louder, and a little more toxic every time. If you've ever found yourself involved in a toxic fandom, share your experience in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to keep unpacking the internet with us.